I realized early on that if I became an actor, I could play a writer and a sculptor and a painter and be all the things you just don't have time to be in your lifetime. I could get to learn about all of them. I've always been a searcher, a hunter. I'm certainly not the only one. They say actors shouldn't get political in everything, but you can't separate yourself. You can't disconnect yourself from anything. I've got a pretty iconoclastic attitude about all institutions myself, and I just think the church was corrupted right after Christ was killed. For a musician to be good, he has to have humanity and care about the other guy. And as for blues, in a sense, black people have kept this country alive and given us our entire musical heritage. People kept asking me, "When are you singing again?" So I kept doing it. It was that simple. I've received a lot of compliments. People come right up to me on the street. They recognize me. You want people to feel something when you tell a story, whether they feel happy or whether they feel sad. I have to wait and see what happens because nobody's in charge. You want people walking away from the conversation with some kernel of wisdom or some kind of impact. The first music I remember hearing was the traditional songs of Kentucky, things like "Roll Along Kentucky Moon." All organized religions are basically the same. I'm big into Eastern concepts, the horror of life, the love of children, the whole phantasmagoria. It's all meaningless. Be still and see what happens. All of life unfolds perfectly. You have to get beyond consciousness. I like to stay home and watch television, the game show channel, mostly. I have a good ear for languages. I just wasn't psychologically made to get married or, God forbid, be a father. I'm an actor, and this is holding the mirror up to nature, as it were. I really like the mariachi singing in westerns. I watch television, game shows. I hate the hosts and the people on them, and I love the questions and the answers. I can understand why it takes some people a long time to really be a singer. You have to find out, why am I singing? What am I doing this for? I do it because I enjoy it, and philosophically, music is a catalyst. It's a refining agent. Alien? Oh yeah. I still get fan mail almost every week, pictures from all over the world on that movie. That's one of the most popular films I've done. But I'm not imaginative. I couldn't look into the future, like Star Wars or robots or anything like that. I met Dylan on Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid. We buddied around for quite a while after that. We jammed together. He liked my Mexican songs. I was the classic killer. I always played an angry man. I think it was because I used to really be like that. I was hostile. And because I had a good sense of theatrical truth, I used my anger and rebelliousness and just went with it. Anger was just a part of me. I was in World War II at the Battle of Okinawa. I've had offers that could have made me much richer and much more famous than I am. I've passed up opportunities. I've avoided the spotlight. I've never been to Academy Awards, didn't relate to them. Silence is the most powerful state. Sam Shepard is a brilliant writer. I made it a point not to graduate. I thought that was a positive, independent kind of statement. I never liked being ordered around, which of course was an overreaction. I eventually found out that I didn't mind being ordered around at all when it was by someone who knew what he was doing. I don't blame anyone but myself for the kind of parts I got. To blame external circumstances is absolute folly. I hated being typecast in those roles. It was personally limiting, only playing stereotyped heavies. But I got those roles because I was angry, because that's what I projected. I was angry at my mother and father because they didn't get along, angry at the church. On top of that, I had an extreme lack of self-confidence. Paris, Texas, gave me a chance to play compassion, and I'm spelling that with a capital C. I worked with the best directors: Martin Scorsese, John Huston, David Lynch, Alfred Hitchcock. Alfred Hitchcock was great. I always had a dramatic flair. I liked to dress up like a cowboy, play make-believe, but I didn't realize acting was something I had to do until I got to college. The soul is an illusion. I used to sing when I was 6 years old. When the family would leave the house, I'd get up on the stool and sing. T for Texas, T for Tennessee, T for Thelma, the gal that made a wreck out of me. I was in love with my babysitter. She was 18, I was 6. I've had chances to record albums, which I haven't done. My favorite films are Paris, Texas, and Repo Man. Every actor is a character actor. Singing and acting are actually very similar things. Anyone can sing and anyone can be a film actor. All you have to do is learn. I was singing the blues when I was 6. Kind of sad, eh? I could have made it as a singer, but I went with acting, surrendered to it, in a way. You can do stuff on stage that you can't do off stage. You can be angry as hell and enraged and get away with it on stage, but not off. When man began to think he was a separate person with a separate soul, it created a violent situation. A friend is somebody who doesn't lie. I'd love to meet Gandhi and Christ. I'm sure he'd be interesting, and a lot different than a lot of people would think. I think any performing artist can do films, or, as a matter of fact, anybody out there in the street can be a film actor with no experience whatsoever if you've got a good director. What did we play in the Harry Dean Stand Band? It was old blues and country, all covers. I never wrote anything. The first film I ever remember, I think my mother took me to it, was called She Married Her Boss with Melvin Douglas. I was trained on the stage, and I can do stage as well as I can do movies, but I prefer films. I have nothing to do with anything that happens to me. I had opportunities to be a lot more successful, but for some reason or other, the way I was particularly genetically wired, I turned down a lot of opportunities. I could have been a lot more famous and played leading men in everything. For whatever reason, I didn't go for it. Molly Ringwald, she's a natural talent. Every girl in this country related to that girl. I was in the Pacific Theater, as they say. I sang barbershop harmony and sort of got into performing, and it just came naturally. Then when I was in college after the war, I did a play, Pygmalion, by George Bernard Shaw. And from then on, I knew that's what I wanted to do. Fame in itself is, it involves a whole discussion on just that word, fame. It's a power. It's another degree of power to be famous. I think it's obvious. You have more influence the more well-known you are, and hopefully, it's righteously used. I've avoided success artfully. I liked Repo Man, satire. Do nothing. Let it happen. Don't try. I like to watch Paris, Texas, but I have no desire to see it. I did it. It's just so frustrating when you're in a supporting role because you only get to express a part of yourself. To put it mildly, I was just a very late bloomer. I know I've got the ability to bring a sense of menace to the screen. I have that specific competence, and it's generally kept me working. I could have been a writer. I love studying ancient history and seeing how empires rise and fall, sowing the seeds of their own destruction, Food tells you everything about the way people live and who they are. There's no such thing as simple. Simple is hard. Most people have stereo vision, so why belittle that very important element of our existence? I do know that some Buddhists are able to attain peace of mind. When I'm making a film, I'm the audience. My whole life has been movies and religion. That's it, nothing else. You make a deal. You figure out how much sin you can live with. Film in the 20th century, it's the American art form, like jazz. I still dislike phones, yeah. The cinema began with a passionate, physical relationship between celluloid and the artists and craftsmen and technicians who handled it, manipulated it, and came to know it the way a lover comes to know every inch of the body of the beloved. No matter where the cinema goes, we cannot afford to lose sight of its beginnings. Any film, or to me, any creative endeavor, no matter who you're working with, is, in many cases, a wonderful experience. And as I've gotten older, I've had more of a tendency to look for people who live by kindness, tolerance, compassion, a gentler way of looking at things. We can't keep thinking in a limited way about what cinema is. We still don't know what cinema is. Maybe cinema could only really apply to the past, or the first 100 years, when people actually went to a theater to see a film, you see? One of the things is that the good intentions of prohibition, from reading over the years and from becoming obsessed with the research of gangs in New York City, seems to have allowed crime figures at the time, like Luciano, Capone, Torrio, and Rothstein, to organize to become more powerful, which pulled all the way through until the 70s. The young people today are the 21st century. I also saw the Dalai Lama a few times. I happen to like vampires more than zombies. Being a father at a later age is different from when I had my other two daughters, when I was in my 20s and 30s. If you're in your 60s and you're with the kid every day, you're dealing with the mind of a child, so it opens up the childishness in you again. I don't really see many people. Don't really go anywhere either. I've seen many movies over the years, and there are only a few that suddenly inspire you so much that you want to continue to make films. I'm an older generation. Hong Kong cinema is something you can't duplicate anyway. It's very good for me to remember what actors go through. There must be people who remember World War II and the Holocaust who can help us get out of this rut. Very often I've known people who wouldn't say a word to each other, but they'd go to see movies together and experience life that way. As you grow older, you change. My father had this mythological sense of the old New York, and he used to tell me stories about these old gangs, particularly the 40 Thieves in the 4th Ward. I can't really envision a time when I'm not shooting something. Our world is so glutted with useless information, images, sounds, all this sort of thing. It's a cacophony. It's like a madness, I think, that's been happening in the past 25 years. And I think anything that can help a person sit in a room alone and not worry about it is good. If we just sit and exist and understand that, I think it will be helpful in a world that seems like a record that's going faster and faster. We're spinning off the edge of the universe. Howard Hughes was this visionary who was obsessed with speed and flying like a god. I loved his idea of what filmmaking was. I think all of us, under certain circumstances, could be capable of some very despicable acts. And that's why, over the years, in my movies I've had characters who didn't care what people thought about them. We try to be as true to them as possible, and maybe see part of ourselves in there that we may not like. Popular music formed the soundtrack of my life. I love the look of planes and the idea of how a plane flies. The more I learn about it, the better I feel. While I still may not like it, I have a sense of what is really happening. It seems to me that any sensible person must see that violence does not change the world, and if it does, then only temporarily. I mean, I have a project that I have been wanting to make for quite a while now, and basically, it's a story of my parents growing up in the Lower East Side. I mean, music totally comes from your soul. I just wanted to be an ordinary parish priest. I wish I could do everything in 3D. What the Dalai Lama had to resolve was whether to stay in Tibet or leave. He wanted to stay, but staying would have meant the total destruction of Tibet, because he would have died, and that would have ripped the heart out of his people. More personal films, you could make them, but your budgets would be cut down. It did remind me of something out of Greek mythology. The richest king who gets everything he wants, but ultimately his family has a curse on him from the gods. If it's a modern-day story dealing with certain ethnic groups, I think I could open up certain scenes for improvisation, while staying within the structure of the script. I'm very phobic about flying, but I'm also drawn to it. I'm going to be 60, and I'm almost used to myself. I was born in 1942, so I was mainly aware of Howard Hughes' name on RKO radio pictures. I think what happened, there was just the budget would be too big to build these sets because nothing really exists here in New York of that period. You have to build it all. I think there's only 1 or 2 films where I've had all the financial support I needed. All the rest, I wish I'd had the money to shoot another 10 days. I know there were many good policemen who died doing their duty. Some of the cops were even friends of ours, but a cop can go both ways. I grew up within Italian-American neighborhoods. Everybody was coming into the house all the time, kids running around, that sort of stuff. So when I finally got into my own area, so to speak, to make films, I still carried on. I don't agree with everything he did in his life, but we're dealing with this Howard Hughes at this point, and also ultimately the flaw in Howard Hughes, the curse, so to speak. I certainly wasn't able to get it when I was a kid growing up on the Lower East Side. It was very hard at that time for me to balance what I really believed was the right way to live with the violence I saw all around me. I saw too much of it among the people I knew. I'd always say that I've been in a bad mood for maybe 35 years now. I try to lighten it up, but that's what comes out when you get me on camera. Every year or so, I try to do something. It keeps me refreshed as to what's going on in front of the lens, and I understand what the actor is going through. Eradicating a religion of kindness is, I think, a terrible thing for the Chinese to attempt. The term giant is used too often to describe artists, but in the case of Akira Kurosawa, we have one of the rare instances where the term fits. On every film you suffer, but on some you really suffer. I'd like to do a number of films, westerns, genre pieces, maybe another film about Italian Americans where they're not gangsters, just to prove that not all Italians are gangsters. All my life, I never really felt comfortable anywhere in New York, except maybe in an apartment somewhere. Some of my films are known for the depiction of violence. I don't have anything to prove with that anymore. I think when you're young and have that first burst of energy and make 5 or 6 pictures in a row that tell the stories of all the things in life you want to say, well, maybe those are the films that should have won me the Oscar. I make different films now. You don't make pictures for Oscars. Sometimes when you're heavy into the shooting or editing of a picture, you get to the point where you don't know if you could ever do it again.